So, I can handle violence in film. I can handle cuts and stabs, blood and gore, whatever. I enjoy the tamer side with the odd slasher here and there, up the ante a bit, and I'll admit that I like the Saw franchise, and raise the bar just a little bit more, and I'll even say that I find Cannibal Holocaust to be pretty interesting. What I'm saying is that I'm no stranger to these sorts of films. I've seen some of the more mainstream ones such as Hostel and I Spit on Your Grave, and I've seen some of the more lesser known ones, at least in terms of non-horror film buffs, such as Martyrs and High Tension. That being said, I'm well aware that there are just plenty of these sorts of films that I haven't seen, and I'm okay with that. Films like a Serbian film and Antichrist, which I'm not desperate to see. In fact, I doubt I'll ever see them. And what do all of these films have in common? Well, they're all part of some guy on IMDb's list which is titled, "Oh my god man, these movies are so fucked up, I swear." But seriously, these are all films which are considered very disturbing to the niche audiences that seek them. And I've seen my fair share. Some which were good, some not so much. And why is this relevant, you ask, even though I know that you've read the title and know exactly what I'm getting to? Well, Rob Zombie's latest movie about horrible people doing horrible things could be considered part of this subgenre. Zombie himself even stated that it's his most brutal film to date. I'm Jack Fitzpatrick and this is my review of 31. 31 criminally wastes its potential. Instead of being any good, the film constantly comes off as sleazy, juvenile, and just plain cruel, in the worst of ways. It presents everything in such an ugly and unpleasant way, but most of all, 31 is just plain cynical. So with its weak script, 31 manages to squeeze out a story which resembles something like The Running Man or The Hunger Games, mixed of course with Rob Zombie's uncharismatic charms from his previous work, such as House of a Thousand Corpses and his rendition of Halloween. In 31, a relatively small group of people are kidnapped and they must involuntarily play this game called 31. In 31, they must survive 12 hours in this building which is set up to kill them. And throughout these 12 hours, which the bulk of the film is set in, they must battle their way through an assembly of foes which are all aiming to win the game by killing their victims first. And from that synopsis, the film sounds like it has some real potential, like it sounds like it could be cool. Instead though, we get a film which severely lacks any sense of fun or seriousness. Instead, it does neither of those things right. It's not thrilling or scary in any sense of those words, and it's not really very amusing throughout. However much I personally didn't like it though, 31 did undeniably start off with quite a bang, involving a slow-paced introduction performed by the movie's psychotic villain who goes by the name Doomhead. And with this character come the most interesting aspects of the film. Despite how much you despise him, Doomhead is easily the best character in the entire thing. He's imposing, unpredictable, and the actor does his very best, and actually does a fantastic job. If anything is worth remembering from this movie, it's him. And because of such a promising introduction, 31 definitely just ends up being disappointing. Nothing ever quite reaches the peak that this scene ever does. With the exception of Doomhead though, the film is also made up by a cast of just unlikable characters. To be fair though, what more would you expect from a Rob Zombie movie at this point? In the main group though, you get the, I don't know, they're all pretty indistinguishable. They're all boring and they're all unlikable. And opposing these characters is a group of violent psychopaths who compete in the game of 31. And they're all made up of an array of generic clowns. There's a Nazi one, there's a pair which wield chainsaws, and there's another pair who are named Deathhead and Sexhead, because of course they are. It's like the film tries its best to be tasteless and as stupid as possible. And every single one of these characters on either side, they're all unlikable. And so as the plot goes on and people start dying, I just sat there unaffected. None of the deaths were upsetting, and none of them were amusing either. In fact, for a movie such as this, 31 was actually quite tame in terms of blood and gore. There was a severe lack of creative kills and just general violence, which isn't exactly a problem, but it did surprise me. But this was probably primarily due to the horrendous way that the film was shot, specifically within the action. The camera constantly did wrong in two different ways. It would get up in real close with an extreme close-up, and it would also be accompanied by shaky cam. This made it so that you just couldn't see anything. And to make these particular scenes even worse, there were often two fights going on at once, and it would intercut between both of the scenes of action. I think what the film was most likely going for was to make the action look like it was chaotic and overwhelming, but instead it just came off as disorientating. And perhaps this was due to such a low budget. It has been said that the movie was heavily crowdfunded, and this was to avoid censorship from interfering studios. It's here we're apt to say that that's actually pretty admirable of Rob Zombie. He stuck to his guns and he made the movie that he wanted to make. I just can't for the life of me figure out why this is the movie that he wanted to make. That being said though, considering such a low budget, the movie manages to look very good for what it is. Zombie constantly proves that he is capable of creating an effective atmosphere. Much of the setting is intentionally made to look dreadful and grim, but while also remaining kinda pretty. Rob Zombie does a remarkable job of making ugly places look interesting. In the end though, 31 seems to not know what it's aiming for. Maybe that's just me, but it constantly had me questioning things. Things such as, does it want to be funny? Is it supposed to be funny when the villain falls on their chainsaw? Or is it supposed to be victorious? Or is it supposed to be scary? Or is it supposed to be a bad thing? Whose side are we supposed to be on? Are we supposed to be on the killer side or the victim side? What am I supposed to think about any of these people? Am I supposed to like them? Because I don't. Is the film meant to be intense? Or is it supposed to be primarily fun? Is it aiming to be like a Sharknado where it's so bad it's good? Or is it aiming to be a genuinely good movie? I honestly don't know. 31 is just a mess. It's not funny when it tries to be comedic, it's a shit show of subpar acting, and it's all round just not a very good time. I would rate 31 a 4 out of 10. So let me know what you thought about the movie, let me know what you thought about the review, and like and comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff, and hopefully we get more good horror movies.